This is an experiment, so I want you to bring out your WOPA app, and there's a, so bring up the talk and do a review. Go ahead and click 1 right now, and go ahead and click, did this talk match the explanation? Definitely click 1, because it will not, right? So the purpose of this talk, there's basically, I've had some clarification in the product that I'm selling. And it's a pretty exciting process, and I want to kind of walk you through that, but I want to do it in a way that's a little bit backwards from usual. So last week, we put on a conference called Lone Star Elixir. And I got the pleasure to see 3 Thomases talk. David Thomas, Randall Thomas, who you'll get to see later today, and if you missed that talk, you're crazy. He's brilliant. And then Dave's son, Zachary Thomas. And 2 of those talks were particularly influential to me. One of them was Dave Thomas. It's like seeing old Dave from like 5 or 10 years ago. He was my mentor as an author and as a speaker. And he gave this talk on something called the Dreyfus Learning Model. And the Dreyfus Learning Model is basically a learning science for pilots, where they studied what it took to go from 1, which is like a beginner, to 5, which is an expert. And then Zachary Thomas did another talk. And by the way, one of the things that I emphasize in the product I'm selling right now, which is just a subscription, think of it as 7 languages in 7 weeks on a subscription basis, where you have a little bit of book and a little bit of video. But one of the things that I was having a hard time articulating was, why should you do this? And Dave crystallized it for me, that what we all want to do in our career is work our way up to a 5, and then knock yourself back down, all the way down, and start again at a 1, and ramp up again, and knock yourself down to a 1, and start up again. You get that beginner's mind. And so that's what we want to talk about today. But I don't want to give a talk. I want to ask questions. So we're going to flip the stage, right? So you're going to be the talk, and I'm just going to ask some questions. So the first person that I need, so I need a microphone. And so you also have the sanitizer, so we'll sanitize, as you're coming up and as you leave, we'll just be really extra careful. So I need somebody who is learning Erlang or Elixir right now. Okay, there's a plant, yes. We talked about it just a couple of minutes before. Come on up. And I need someone who teaches programming languages to people that don't often. Anna Sherman, and also a plant. So do you know what questions I'm going to ask you?
I do not.
Right. I know we talked a little bit about the questions, so come on up. So you can grab a lapel mic and have a seat.
All right.
So what's your name, Anna?
I'm Anna Sherman. Anna Sherman. There we go.
And what's your name, Doug?
I'm Doug Purcell.
So my first question is for you, Doug. What language do you know best right now?
I know Python the best.
Python, what is that about?
It's a general scripting language. Could be used for data science or web development as well. So yeah.
So what the heck are you doing at a Beam conference?
Very good question. So I'm interested in learning about functional programming and also concurrency. And I heard that Erlang was pretty good at that. So here to check it out.
And how does it feel for you right now?
It feels good. It's a lot different from the type of languages I'm used to code in, because I never code in a functional programming language. Well, I guess mostly it's not pure functional, but mostly functional programming language. So it's quite different to me.
So Anna, you have taught a lot of people like Doug to code over the years. What do you do where you're connected to teaching programmers?
Sorry. What's the?
Yeah. So what's the context? Where do you teach programmers?
In Chattanooga, Tennessee. And usually where I start is I actually start with Ruby, just because it's one of those languages that you can get in really quickly and kind of get something dirty working, and it gets people excited. And then I try to move them towards more Elixir functional, like, okay, you've built a program and it's working. So I'm maybe not traditional in like starting people functionally, but I like to move them that way for sure.
Interesting. So you're also a member of a pretty cool startup. What's that called?
Zillion.
I love you, Craig. We got your mention in there. Zillion is a wonderful company, and you've ramped up a couple of pretty fresh Elixir developers. Can you describe what that's like? What is a Elixir developer like at the very beginning? What are they able to do?
I mean, it's kind of nice because Elixir is so readable. So like people get in and like can pretty quickly understand kind of what's going on, whether they understand like what a pipe is or things like that. And then it's been a pretty like smooth transition for our developers. I think we had someone who was like writing C# before that's come in and it's like it's different, but some like it's just smoother, I guess. But it's having our testing in place has helped. So people can come in and see like what is this code supposed to be doing, and things like that. Good practices have helped.
So Doug, can you remember the first Python program that you ever wrote?
Oh yeah, definitely.
What were you able to do?
Oh, just simple hello world type of dealio.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And so how did you figure out what to type?
I used the online documentation and just play with that.
So did you stray off the script at all in that very first few minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you stray off the script?
I just just curious about things, so did a lot of Googling around and just play with it, read the errors I got, which were quite numerous, and try to fix them.
And so what would you say is hard about developers learning Ruby or learning Elixir?
Yeah, it's not knowing what you don't know. And I think that's like true of anything that you're learning. It's like not knowing that you should be writing tests, or you should be, looking, what are these errors? But Elixir does a really good job with its errors, and they're pretty, specific. And I think in one of the releases they just made them even better. So like, Ruby, there are some cryptic ones for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Anna. Thank you, Doug. Hand of applause. My next set of questions, I need one intermediate developer. Intermediate developer, what's your name? Aaron, come on up. Hand sanitizer right there. You know the protocol. And I need one expert. Come on. I'm very patient. Come on. And what's your name?
Ted.
Ted. And what do you write?
Pick one.
All right. This
Mostly
is many
or-
times over.
Mostly or
Oh, we'll do the hand sanitizer after. That's great. Make sure you're working in. Okay. So what language do you write?
Sort of the same what he said, pick one, but I'm not very super deep into any of the other ones. But mostly recently Elixir and Python.
Elixir and Python.
Yeah.
So let's go with Elixir first.
Okay.
So how often are you in the reference documents?
Fairly often. It's always a tab open. I usually always have like the documentation open, whether it be the standard library or whatever library I'm using.
And how long does it take you to find the documentation for a given function that you're looking for?
The standard library, not too long, because it's pretty well documented, but anything in certain libraries sometimes are a little less documented.
Yeah.
And then usually I'll try to jump to reading the source code at that point if I really can't find what I'm looking for in the docs.
Okay. I'm not sure about ducks, but okay. So so now we're in Elixir, and you have a problem that you don't know how to solve. Where do you go? Like, let's say you're looking for a way to parse this new data format.
Okay. The first thing I would do is, if I'm in a setting where there's other developers around me, I'll ask around first.
And who do you ask first? Who's your first call?
Usually her.
All right. And what's your name?
I'm Quinn.
Oh, Quinn. Thank you. So you ask Quinn, and
Usually.
Quinn says, "Oh, I don't know, and I'm busy." What do you say?
I say, okay, that's fine, and I usually try to go do some research. I'll try to I'll go to, if I'm in Elixir, I'll go to Hex and maybe try to see if there's a package available. there's like a keyword maybe. Otherwise, I'll go to GitHub and take a look at some repositories that might be tagged or related.
So you'd say that you're pretty fluent in navigating how to find things in Elixir.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Ted, what code do you write most of day to day?
Erlang.
Erlang. And can you tell me what makes Erlang code look pleasing to you?
Oh, I don't know that pleasing is the word I'd use. So I've been programming for 50 years. Erlang was the hardest syntax for me to pick up.
Interesting.
But it is now natural to me. But it took me longer to pick up Erlang syntax than any other language.
And why is that?
Well, because I think because of the just the different delimiters. You know, 75% of languages end lines with a semicolon. You know, functions open with you know, you have parentheses around the parameters, and then you have curly braces around the body of the function. And
what's the arity of the reduce method?
The arity of the reduce method?
In Erlang, or let's say arity of a map. What's map in Erlang, do you know? I'm trying to give him so I don't know Erlang well enough to give him a really deep question. So the point I want to make here is that one of the things that you notice is when I asked Todd about what makes,
Ted.
When I asked Ted about what makes Erlang pleasing, he paused, right? And one of the things that happens in the Dreyfus model is that you go from very much a list-oriented, structured mind to an intuitive mind. And I was flipping his mind to the other side, right? And so that means that when Ted is teaching a rank beginner, that's he's going to be flipping his mind also.
One of the problems with it is, so I now sort of think in Erlang. I have a really hard time now when I go over to a procedural language. You know, I wrote C++ professionally for 20 solid years, and I have to work at it because I'm thinking in a functional model now, and an object-oriented model is no longer my native tongue.
Interesting. So what object-oriented language did you write before Erlang?
C++ primarily.
C++. Interesting. So give both of these folks a hand. Okay, hand sanitizer first. And I would like 2 more people. I would like one person who learns a lot of languages. Great. Oh, Brooke. You want to? And in front of Brooke, what's your name? Jeremy. Jeremy. Brooke and Jeremy, come on up. So hand sanitizer, please. Yes. So I hope what we've shown so far is that in the Dreyfus model, when you're learning a language, there are things that are awkward to you. Having a lot of structure. Like the idea that that when Doug was learning Python, he went straight to a manual to learn exactly how to type "Hello World," and then when his first inclination was to go off script a little bit, but not by very far, right? And then so as things went on, we're less in our left brain, right, and we're more in our right brain in the intuitive brain. So so one of the cool things, by the way, Brooklyn, thank you for a wonderful keynote.
Oh, thank you.
And what's your name?
Jeremy.
Jeremy. So Jeremy, thank you for speaking with us up here. So one of the things that Jeremy told me was that she liked not just the book 7 Languages in 7 Weeks, but the series. Why is that true?
I like assimilating a lot of information fairly quickly and doing comparisons. 7 languages in 7 weeks, each language is a different model, a different paradigm. And so you get to do a lot of compare and contrast between things and say, it's not like, Python and Ruby, which are fairly similar, and you can kind of say, well, this is like that, but with, a little twist on it. It's, here's different ways of thinking and structuring the way you think about a problem completely.
Okay, I want to ask the audience something. Was the keynote a beautiful beatdown for anybody else? I mean, there are some complex concepts out there. So, who had trouble following any of the keynote? Okay, the rest of you are lying. It's the best technical talk that I've seen this year. But one of the things that was cool was the assimilation of languages. And so I want to talk. What are the languages that you'd like to learn?
I've been really into MLs.
ML. So what is it about ML that has you excited?
They're very different from everything else I was taught.
In what way?
I mean, so the first one I looked at was Haskell, because I saw like a little snippet of it in a programming languages class, and I thought the type declarations were really cool, just to be able to see at a glance like what is supposed to be happening. Because like my first language was Python, and that doesn't really give you much security. It's stuck type, so whatever.
And can you talk about the first non-trivial thing that you wrote in an ML language, where you had to actually apply the types?
I haven't really.
Okay.
I've been trying to learn them, but I'm struggling
Okay,
with
we get to dive into the beginner's mind a little bit here, right? Okay, so you're an expert in what language?
I don't know, probably Python and JavaScript. Just unfortunate experience.
Just two, right? That's a lot of languages to be an expert in. And so can you contrast a little bit the idea of going to an ML language where you haven't really hit the type models hard? What's the difference?
The sort of like explicit nature and the correctness that it forces you to have. Like Python and JavaScript, you can just kind of like throw code out and it'll probably seem to work a lot of the time. But the lack of guarantees and like the lack of robust checks that the system has just kind of like tricks you into the sense of I've accomplished the problem that I wanted to solve as opposed to actually having solved it correctly or fully.
Okay, so and I want to ask you both the questions I want to take on it. So it is a hard thing to sit down and get beaten down by a compiler in a language. Would you agree?
So I think I agreed at first when I was learning these languages.
First,
and
yes.
now it's a conversation with the compiler. It is a code reviewer, automated.
It's an automated code reviewer, right? Okay, so you're saying that you went down, you went from like most of us, the Dreyfus model tops out at a 5. Brooklyn, I think, is like a 6 or 7. But you knocked yourself down to 1, and now you're working yourself up to 2, 3, or even 4 in some of these languages. Mm-hmm. And so, why would you do that to yourself over and over?
So it's less about the language or even the ecosystem. It's about the modes of thought, right?
Okay.
So even though, say, on the Beam, we're really focused on this message passing actor concurrent style, right? But there are times when I want a more structured, safe, correct way of working. So I want to go and grab some tools that I have from Haskell and bring them in, right? Or whatever it is. So the language matters less than the semantics, right?
Yes, and so how about you? Same question. So why would you do it to yourself? This is a painful process, right? So I had a mentee that was wearing a shirt and was really smiling ear to ear. It said, I love programming. No, I hate programming. I hate programming. I hate programming. It works. I love programming, right? And so why would you do that to yourself?
Curiosity, honestly, is the biggest thing. Like, it's kind of fun to me to have that sort of void to like explore. I mean, programming is one aspect where you can do that, but like picking up any weird skill that, even if it doesn't have any applications the rest of my life, it's fun to like feel confused.
Okay, and this is actually the whole answer. I was hoping that we'd get there. I was staring at the clock, kind of in a mild panic. But the curiosity and the dopamine that you get after you break from the learner's mind into the next level, when you start to head up, so most of us say that we're learning all the time, and that's almost always a lie. We plateau, right? And if you can make a regular habit of knocking yourself down in the Dreyfus Learning Model, whether it's a tool that you actually use or not in your day job, that's an extraordinarily valuable thing to do. And if you can mix in fun, which was Zachary Thomas's talk, it is that much more valuable. And that's what 7 Languages in 7 Weeks was about. That's what the whole series is about. And that's what I discovered that I was about when I heard Dave Thomas and Zachary Thomas speak. And so that's the talk, and I'm open for questions. Yeah.
What has been the most mind-expanding language you have forced yourself to learn?
So it's always the last one that I've been digging in, right? And so that one is Pony. So we have a acquaintance in common. His name is Sean Allen. And Sylvan Klevich is the creator of Pony. Sean Allen is the close protege. Right now they're both in Microsoft research. Brilliant men, kind men, humble men. But the thing that I like about it is that it goes very much against the grain, right? So it isn't about being beautiful and smooth, which Ruby, Crystal, Python are all about. It's about being correct under pressure and under concurrency. So it has a type model that allows concurrency when is part of its the type, and it's called a reference capability, and the reference capability will, for example, restrict concurrency in one of 3 ways, right? It's either shareable or it's not. It's either so if it's not shareable, it might be, or if it's shareable, it might be isolated, and if it's so there's 3 dimensions of that. It's really interesting. So so Pony is kind of the one right now. Also, I'm a big Prolog fan. Other questions? I probably have time for one more question.
So you recently went to this thing, you learned this Dreyfus thing. What are you going to do different? You mentioned it's going to change how you're going to do your business, which is teaching everyone else how to do it.
Yes. So basically, it's going to change the way that I'm doing business. More, it's going to crystallize the way that I tell people about what I'm doing. So Groxio has always been about getting people. It's first about getting your boss into partnership with you, right? And getting your boss into partnership with you basically means I need time to play. The big deal is, you had the moment, and thank you. I was really nervous about that. But when you can mix in curiosity and fun with this beginner's mind, that kicks us into overdrive. And so what that means is that if we can get our boss to invest just 2 to 4 hours every week, it's not a sunk cost. They should want to do that. It's an investment. It turns good developers into great ones, and we've seen it over and over and over. Yeah?
Have you done any work to quantify that investment?
To quantify that investment, I haven't, but there are a lot of people that have, and I'd love to take that offline, that question offline. So the company Zillion provides some time to kind of play hours. Google, most of their great hours have come out of play hours. One of our business partners at Gixie, Elixir, Carbon 5, has play hours, and they're not intended to be productive, but very often important, significant research comes out of these times, and that's probably enough. And so I'm out of time. I don't want to push into your free time, but thank you very much. Quick poll. Who says that this was a bad idea? Who says that this was interesting, they'd like to see more of it? Okay, thanks.